All right, if you're here for the Oscar fair, you're in the wrong spot because this is all about March Madness, predictions, and I guess some tidbits, maybe. I don't know. I'm still waiting on, because I did so well on this last year. Seriously, go back in my video. You'll see how big a moron I am when it comes to predicting these. But I always love the prediction type stuff, so I always, I shouldn't say always, probably about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I probably started taking this seriously, but anyways, yeah, I did so well last year. I'm still waiting on that callback from Espen or Espen Squared. Yeah, one of the two. I don't care. I'll take Espen Squared at this point. That's fine. But moving on from that joke, yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and we'll get started here with my predictions for who is going to be doing well this year in the March Madness tournament. And these are always, of course, super fun to predict. I try to watch as much basketball as I can, and from November all the way up to March at the end of the conference tournaments and stuff. And yeah, realistically, though, this year is very reminiscent of the year we had 2 years ago. That was the tournament that got canceled just as the COVID stuff started hitting in the U.S. So that was about right at 2 years ago now. And yeah, I remember that year there was no solid front runner for who was going to win the tournament. I mean, every team that was a 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, it didn't matter. All of them had just had some awful losses on the season. And then other teams who normally wouldn't be in the tournament, all of a sudden they had great wins. And it's like, yeah, they would have their sloppy losses as well, but it was just extremely unpredictable. Extremely unpredictable. And I if I remember right, like the number one in the APP poll or whatever was jumping all over the place. It would be a different team like almost every other week or whatever. So we don't quite have as crazy a season this year. The Zags kind of stayed at the top there after I think Auburn was the last one to be up there, and then they fell off after a couple, I think it was 1 or 2 losses there, yeah. And the Zags have been there ever since, and right now I believe they are the favorite to win the tournament by the odds. I'll tell you how far I take them here in a while, but yeah, you've also got Kentucky is up there. Arizona, I believe, is the second most popular pick here. You've got, let's see who else here. Baylor's a pretty popular pick. Kansas, yeah, so those are your 1 seeds, by the way. Anyways, but yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll get started here. And some of these teams I'll have more to say about than others. Obviously, the smaller conference teams, those I've only been able to watch just a little bit of through the season. Every once in a while, they'll play a Power 5 conference or something, and they'll play somebody in the whatever. I always forget the name of Gonzaga's. I was going to say Mountain West, but that sounds wrong now all of a sudden. It probably is Mountain West, but now I can't remember. And then the Big East, I think, is also one. It's almost like you have a Power 7 when it comes to college basketball. Anyways, so yeah, I'll start with the first 4, and I don't think this is in the right order, but from the bracket I have that's printed off here, Rutgers Notre Dame is the first one, and of these first 4 games, I think this is the most divisive. I think this is the one that everybody has a totally different opinion on who's going to win this one. And these first 4, of course, are just kind of for brownie points. Most bracket watchers and stuff, they don't really count these. They kind of come back as bonus points if there's like a tiebreaker or something. So it's still important to try to get these right, though, because one of these 8 teams could go on to be Sweet 16, or could be like last year for UCLA, they could be going from the first 4 to the final 4. I had them losing that first game to Michigan State, of course. So, anyways, let's go ahead then and get this started here with Rutgers Notre Dame. I have to say, Notre Dame I've watched a little bit of, and I think for the most part, a lot of their good wins have been when the other team was just not doing extremely well. Rutgers, in the meantime, has been able to, and they always play very well at home at the Rack in New York there, but, or is it Jersey? I forget. It's East Coast there. But anyhow, they always play very well at the Rack, but they've also got that a few quality wins there. A good win over Purdue at home on a buzzer beater relatively early in the Big Ten Conference season. So, and because I'm an Iowa fan and therefore by extension I like a lot of Big Ten teams, I have to go Rutgers here to win that game over Notre Dame. Then you got Wyoming, Indiana, and I believe this one is also a 12-12 lineup, by the way. I'll tell you what, Wyoming, I think, is the dark horse here, not just to win this first 4 game, but potentially they could be, because I'm going to see where they're at in the bracket here. Or is it 11-11? Maybe they're 11 seed. Now I can't find them, because it's like, yeah, on some of these it's flipped for where they're at. No, it's 12. Okay, they are 12 seed. Because they'd have to play the 5 seed next, which is St. Mary's. There's a few people that think Wyoming can beat St. Mary's and possibly give UCLA, presuming it's UCLA and not Akron on the 4 and 13 play there. Some people that are really thinking that it could be Wyoming that gives St. Mary's a run for their money, and possibly UCLA, if as long as UCLA sticks around. So, unfortunately, though, again, I got to go with my Big Ten spirit. I got to go Indiana, who did very well, I think, coming up the stretch, especially when they got to the Big Ten tournament. Now, it's true, that was in Indianapolis, so they kind of almost had a home turf kind of territory there. So, I could be very wrong on that, but I don't know. I just got to go with the Hoosiers there. Then you got two 16s, or two 16-on-16 matchups, I should say, are the next ones, which is Wright State and Bryant. I'm just going to go Wright State on that one. And Texas Southern versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and I'm going Texas Southern on that one. All right, so I think what we'll do here is I'm going to go from west to east to south to midwest, and we'll go down each bracket for their first round. So it'll be the West first round, then the East first round, then the South first round, and then the Midwest first round. That's the way I'm going to do it. And some people, they like to go through the whole bracket and then, land on who the final 4 is. In other words, the winner of that bracket would be so-and-so. And then they go through the next one. But I'll keep it more exciting. Okay, so the first round for the West is going to pit number 1 Gonzaga against number 16 Georgia State. Zags. Pretty easy. Number 8, number 9. And by the way, the 8-9s are always the most difficult. You got to tend to go for almost all the 9s every year, because the 9s actually statistically do better than the 8s. I think it showed it's like 50.7% of the time, so it's a very razor-thin margin, but it's usually those 9s that win. This one is Boise State as the 8 seed and Memphis as the 9. I just got to say Memphis has the tougher league. They have a couple of decent wins, including a good win at Houston this year. So I got to go Memphis to win that one, so that's the 9 over the 8. Next up is the 5-12 matchup here, and that's Yukon against New Mexico State. Usually New Mexico State is one I like to have around for the second round, usually losing there so they don't quite get to the Sweet 16. But this one, Yukon, even though they've had some frustrating losses for me this year, especially with some of those Big East ones, I think I got to go Yukon on this one. Next up is number 4 Arkansas, number 13 Vermont. I got to say, I was very, very tempted to go with Vermont here. Some of these smaller teams like this, they can beat some of these higher-up seeds first round. We saw it last year with Texas getting beat by Abilene Christian, which totally screwed up my bracket. But this year, my first instinct was to go with Vermont. But I think reason has taken over. I'm going Arkansas. But I think that one is going to be very much a game that's decided in the last 2 or 3 minutes. Like, it's going to come down to who has to foul to get to the to get the other team to try to miss some free throws, crucial free throws, and keep it between a 1 and 2 possession type game type deal there. All right. Then the next one would be number 6 Alabama against the winner of Rutgers Notre Dame. I have Rutgers winning that one to get to this spot, and Alabama is one of the most inconsistent teams, I think, that has a seed that's higher than an 8. I mean, they are absolutely inconsistent. Sure, they've beaten Gonzaga, but they have lost so many games that it just seems like, where the hell did that come from? And I believe including at home against Missouri was one of those. Yeah, so they did have a pretty early loss there in the SEC tournament as well. I'm going Rutgers. I think Rutgers can hang with some of these teams as an 11 seed and advance to the second round. Then we have number 3 Texas Tech against Montana State. Texas Tech, they've got some quality wins. Sure, they've got some blemishes there, like a loss at Kansas State, who is not in the tournament, for example, in the Big 12. But I got to go Texas Tech on that one. Next up would be number 7, Michigan State against Davidson. Davidson, I think, was favored to win their conference. It was Richmond who won instead. So as an at-large bid at number 10, they're still doing really well there. But I got to go Michigan State here. It just seems like they're a team, despite me going with them last year as well in their first game. They just seem like one who can turn it on just at the right times. Tom Izzo has done that again this year when they had, again, like last year, a very up-and-down season. This one was a little bit more consistent than last year, where they just had that really good stretch in the final couple weeks where they just started beating everybody. Didn't matter how good or bad their record was. This year they have a little bit better of a record because they are at 22-12 on the year. But again, some of their losses, like losing by 20, I believe it was more than double digits there to Iowa, for example, when Iowa seemed to be on the real skids there. That's an example there. But still, I'll go Michigan State there. And then you've got number 2, Duke against, I forget, this is CS Fullerton. That's West Coast, I know. But anyways, Duke. Duke just wins that one. Okay. So, moving on now to the East Bracket first round, you've got number 1 Baylor against Norfolk State. Baylor, in my opinion, should not be a 1 seed. They should be a 2 seed, and at that, like a moderate 2 seed. Again, they are, for the most part, a good team. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're worthy of being a 3 seed or higher. I mean, the absolute worst would be a 3 seed. And they are 26-6 on the year. They've got a pretty good record there, obviously. And that's in a big, Power 5 conference and everything. But their loss early to Oklahoma in the Big 12 tournament, for example, losing to Kansas by, again, I believe around the 20 to 25 point margin, somewhere in there. That just shows that there is some weak spots here in this team. But I do think they can get to the second round there, at least with against Norfolk State. Okay, then we have the 8-9 in this one is North Carolina Marquette. This one is also very difficult, but I'm going with North Carolina. And if they can go and beat Duke at the end there, for example, and Marquette, who traditionally does very well at home, but otherwise kind of struggles, their record is 19-12 versus North Carolina's 24-9. I'm going Carolina on that one. Next up would be the number 5 St. Mary's against Wyoming or Indiana, the winner of that one. Originally, I was thinking, it was going to be that Wyoming, Indiana as a possibility there, and some experts out there do like that 12 over that 5 early, but I'm going with St. Mary's on that one. Okay, next up would be number 4 UCLA against Akron. I think it's UCLA. Again, despite a very early loss in the season against Gonzaga, where it was the 1 versus the 2 early. Dick Vitale was there after just coming off of the cancer was he just off the cancer diagnosis, or was he out of the hospital for the first time? Whatever it was. But it looked like it was going to be a super memorable game, and then within the first 10 minutes, you knew that Zags had that game. Despite that, I think they've hung around and they've done very well in the Pac-12. They've got a lot of experience on that team, including a lot of carryovers from last year when they did get to the Final Four and almost beat Gonzaga, took them to overtime, and Zags beat them on a buzzer beater. And, I mean, historically, I remember I was with my family that night, we were all watching it, and I think that's going to be one of the greatest all-time college basketball games, not just for March Madness history, but just of all time. That's an all-time great game. And I remember even the next day, my brother started reading some tweets and news reports and stuff from a lot of analysts who have been in this game for a long, long time. Some of them, were in, the 50s and 60s playing for some of these teams, and they almost unanimously said, that's one of the greatest games we've ever seen. So, I don't know if we'll quite have that rematch this year. UCLA's got to survive Kentucky and Virginia Tech potentially, or Texas potentially, or Purdue, or possibly even struggle early against Baylor. So the chances of that rematch are kind of slim right now, but still. And obviously it's two kind of different teams now, because you always have people that move off of teams and everything there in the offseason. But that being said, UCLA wins that one. All right, number 6 seed Texas against number 11 Virginia Tech. Again, Texas very, very inconsistent. 21-11. I can't pick them in this one, and you have a red hot Virginia Tech team which almost beat Duke by 20 to win the ACC, and the ACC is all over the roadmap this year. I got to go with a red hot team this year and pick Virginia Tech, at least for this first game. Now, they're reminiscent, they're not totally the carbon copy, but they're reminiscent of Georgetown last year, who came out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, in the Big East tournament, and they swept everybody. They took down Nova, they took down Creighton. I mean, they survived against all odds, and they won the Big East, and they were looking at, like Virginia Tech, they were looking at best a bubble team. I think Georgetown's case was even worse last year than Virginia Tech's, who we knew in the last few weeks, it's like, yeah, they're not very likely, but watch out for them. You know, they were kind of one of those bubble watch type teams from bracketology or whatever. But still, after their performance there, I just can't say no to that team right now. Next up would be number 3 Purdue against Yale. Probably Purdue on this one. Again, Purdue, every once in a while they'll have that close game where you're like, why the hell are you even in this game? Like, again, early on, I can say an Iowa game where Kyler Murray went out early, who is absolutely one of the best players around right now. He went out early, and Iowa stuck around. And they could have lost that game by 20, 25. It was at Purdue. But Iowa stuck around, and they almost they came within, I believe, 2 or 3 points when it came down to the stretch there. But Purdue still won. So I think Purdue, they can be a team like that. Maybe not against Yale, but when we get closer, and further on in the games here, I think they can definitely be one of those teams that struggles early, comes back in early on in the second half, up to about the 10-minute remaining in the second half mark. They'll go from down say 10 to 15. All of a sudden, they'll only be down 5 or 6. They'll be a team like that. So, at least for this first round, though, I don't really see them having a problem getting past Yale. Then we have number 7 Murray State against San Francisco. San Francisco early on was an undefeated team for the longest time. Now they're 24-9 and still, as an at-large bid there, as I recall, because I don't think they won their conference. Murray State just seems to be one of those teams. They're 30-2, which I believe is the least number of losses for any team in the whole tournament this year. So keep that in mind. But and that's with a pretty full pretty full season though, 30-2. Some of these teams like what was I going to say? I was going to point to Norfolk State. They're 24-6, so they've only played 30 games. And I believe there was one I saw which had even fewer games than that, but I'm not seeing them now. I thought I saw. Maybe it was one of these conference finals or something I saw earlier in the year here, or I should say earlier last week there. And I saw, they've only played like 23 games or something like that. There might, and again, maybe when we go on we'll find it, but yeah. But Murray State, I think some people kind of look at that as a dark horse, like a number 7 seed that can go Elite 8, possibly that far. But again, to get to the Elite 8, wow, they got to get past Kentucky, and that's going to be some really tough sledding there. So, at least in that first game against San Francisco, I can see them being a little tested in that first game, but I think it's Murray State. And then we have number 2 Kentucky against St. Peter's. Kentucky, pretty easy. Okay, so that's that one. We'll move on to the South bracket. This one, you have Arizona, who's the number 2 overall seed, and I really think, because the Zags have had some questionable losses this year, they went in undefeated last year, but Zona definitely looks like one of those teams where it's like, they look like they could very easily run the table when it comes to some of these teams. They're going to face the winner of Wright State and Bryant, but yeah, they'll probably win that one, have that one running away and stuff. Next up would be the 8 and 9 matchup here in this bracket. That's Seton Hall and TCU. Seton Hall, again, pretty inconsistent. TCU, not much better for their record. That's 21-10 for Seton Hall and 26-12 for TCU. But TCU, I think, is in I was going to say they're in the more battle-hardened conference, but that's not really true because Seton Hall in the Big East, they've got a whole bunch of tough games through the whole season. But I'm going to go TCU in this first round. Houston and UAB is the next one. I'm going Houston. I believe they were a 2 seed last year, and I really didn't think they were all that consistent a team. This year, I think they're about the same, if not maybe ever so slightly worse than last year. Obviously, they're down 3 seeds from where they were last year. But yeah, I see them getting past UAB pretty easily there. Next up would be number 4, Illinois against Chattanooga. Illinois, I took all the way last year, and they lost second goddamn round to Loyola Chicago, who is absolutely one of the biggest upsetters in all history for more recent history, I should say, for March Madness. So we'll see. We'll see how they do this year. They're in the same bracket, so it would be weird. They might face off again this year, but Illinois, I think, will not have too big a problem with Chattanooga early. Then we have a 6 and 11 matchup. This one is close, I think. And I've already taken 2 11s. I'm going one more, and I'm going with the 11 winning over the 6 here for Michigan winning over Colorado State. Now, Colorado State looks like a solid team, and they were ranked pretty early on, and they stayed in the 20 to 18 range, somewhere in there in the AP rankings for a long time. But something tells me Juwan Howard, even though he had a pretty explosive moment there in the Wisconsin game, and that's been pretty much all the news has covered for him this year, something tells me he's going to get it together for that game, and Michigan's going to win in a close one. Tennessee Longwood is the next one here. That's 3 seed for Tennessee and 14 for Longwood. I got to go Tennessee in that one, having won the SEC Conference, which is, again, SEC is a little messy this year, but I think Tennessee can hold on for that one. Next up is Loyola Chicago, the 10 seed against number 7 Ohio State, the 7 seed. Ohio State really has hit the skids here in the last few weeks, including a not very good performance there in the Big Ten Conference tournament. Loyola Chicago, on the other hand, is not the same team they have been the last couple times they've made the tournament. Here a few years ago, they went all the way to, was it Final Four, I believe, as a 11 seed or something like that. This year they're the 10. Last year as the 9 seed, they did beat Illinois in the second round. But in this one, it's weird because you got a 19-11 team like Ohio State and a 25-7 team like Loyola Chicago. And Loyola, I think, in the Missouri Valley Conference, I think... sorry, my computer turned off here. I'm just going to make sure that comes back on. Loyola, I think, when it comes to like playing UNI, which UNI won, came to playing Drake. I believe Drake beat him one time. Yeah, they're just... Normally, if they're getting into this conference and they're or winning that conference and doing this well, to be a pretty high-ranked team, they got to be doing a little better than that. And, yeah, so I got to go with Ohio State to win there, the 7 over the 10. All right, and I believe... Otherwise, I think I'm going with the 7 over the 10 in each of these. Those 7-10s can be pretty dangerous, because those other, because they're right next to the 8-9s and stuff. All right, next up is going to be the last one here in the South bracket, and that's Villanova against Delaware. Delaware was kind of our surprise winner for their conference, but Nova. I think Nova gets at least that first win. All right, next up, you've got the Midwest bracket, the final bracket, and this is the first game is going to be the winner of Texas Southern or Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They get the pleasure of playing Kansas, who winning the Big 12 conference just in a totally great performance there. And Kansas at a 28-6 record, that puts them about in the same range as Baylor. But I don't know. I think a lot of their losses have been ones where you're like, oh, I don't know. There weren't as many like inconsistent losses with them. Like I can't even think of the one early on that I was gonna cite, but still, they have performed pretty well here. But I think they easily get past the 16 there. Next up is going to be the 8 and 9 here. That's San Diego State is the 8 seed and Creighton is the 9 seed. Creighton came the closest they've ever come to winning the Big East tournament when they played Nova. They actually had a lead on Nova coming up to the final stretch, and Nova pulled it off there when they got down to like the last couple minutes. I can sense a very similar performance on that, but I can also see them running away with it against San Diego State. I got Creighton either way. Then you've got my Hawkeyes, number 5 Hawkeyes. I was hoping they would be at least a 5 seed, but after winning Big Ten, I hope that boosted them out of the 6 seed where they were kind of stuck there for a while. They're going to play Richmond, who's the 12 seed, the winner in their conference, beating Davidson on Sunday as well. Hawkeyes, and I think Hawkeyes are fast becoming a real dark horse pick this year. not only to do well in their bracket, potentially beating Kansas or Wisconsin to get to the Final Four. Some people have got them there. I'm not going to spoil right now where I have them, but I've got them winning that first game. All right, then we have, in my opinion, the very most difficult 4 versus 13 matchup this year. This one, I know I'm kicking myself right now because my first instinct was to go with the 13 here, and that's Providence against South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits. I have a cousin who went there. Two. Yeah, I had one cousin who graduated from there, another one who went there for a year, I think. But still, this one, Providence, I've had the joy of watching them all season. They've been very good to me on my bets, sports bets this year. Very, very rarely do they disappoint. Sometimes, yeah, they do force an overtime game or whatever. They have to claw back to force overtime. But they came through in virtually every overtime game I saw this year. No matter if it was a 1, a 2, or even a 3 overtime game, like they had not too many weeks ago here. But I'll tell you what, South Dakota State, like they do in a lot of those like Summit League type winners there, whoever wins that one, they play a very fast game, a high-scoring game. Providence is used to games in the 60s, sometimes the 70s. Once in a while, they'll crack into the 80s. And a lot of those 80-point games, I believe, are when it's more when you get closer to like a 1 or 2 overtime type games. And I'm not 100% on the math on that, but just from my memory, that's where I have it at. So I can see Providence getting underwater very quickly in the first half against South Dakota State. And in all honesty, again, I'm kicking myself. I probably should have stuck with my first gut instinct, which is take the upset. Take 13 over the 4. Take South Dakota State. So if you heard it here first, folks, and I've heard nobody else talk about this one. I'm like, is anybody else looking at this bracket and worried about Providence? Worried about Provi at all? Oh, wow. So, anyways, again, the other 13-4 I was curious about was Arkansas, Vermont. But that one, even in that one, in retrospect, right away I was like Arkansas. With this one, I fought with myself, and I was like, I can really see the 13 advancing there to the second round, and they'd have to play Iowa. So, we'll have to see there. But against my probably better judgment, I'm picking Provi in that first game. They're probably going to win it in a very close, possibly even disputed matchup or whatever. I don't know how it could be disputed, but I guess. I remember a few years ago I covered for my local radio a part of it with a co-host who knew a lot more of what the hell he was talking about for March Madness that year, and I remember there was controversy in Gonzaga, their second round game against Northwestern, because there was a question about whether something was goaltending or not, and it was not called as goaltending, but it was pretty obvious on the replays and stuff that it was goaltending. So I can see something like that happening. And Providence, Provi doesn't have a lot of like those like Christian Leitners or Grayson Allens or any of those like Duke Devil kind of type players, you know. Not like Buddy Boeheim or Boeheim or whatever for Syracuse the other day when he totally gut checked that one guy off of I can't even remember who it was they were playing, Clemson or something like that. Yeah, but anyways, so again, I think Provi's going to advance, but by the skin of their teeth to get to the second round. Then next up, you have number 6 LSU against number 11 Iowa State. I got to go Cyclones here. I know they've been very rough after conference play started. They went into their conference play, I believe, with undefeated through their non-conference season. LSU, though, again, I rank them right up there with Alabama and also with Texas as one of the most inconsistent, unreliable teams this year. And LSU also just fired their coach. So I'm going to go Iowa State there. So I have all 4 11 seeds over the 6s this year. That's kind of dangerous, but those 6-11s sometimes can be scary. Next up, I have it's number 3, Wisconsin against number 14, Colgate, Conson. I think Conson wins that one running away. Next up is a 7-10 matchup, and this one, again, I was initially going to go with the 10, but I'm going to go with 7 here, and that's USC against Miami, Florida. Miami has they beat Duke at Miami relatively early in conference play for ACC, and even in the ACC tournament, we did see Miami give Duke a lot of fits in that game, and unfortunately my cable was crapping out there while I was trying to watch it. or get it turned on, I should say. But so I wasn't quite able to watch that one. But Duke kind of survived that game. So I think it's a close one, but I don't know. I think we all were at least a little reluctant to pick too many Pac-12 teams last year. I got to go at least for this first round USC. Okay, then we have number 2 Auburn against number 15 Jacksonville State to round out the bottom of the Midwest bracket. And I gotta say with this one, I gotta say it's gonna be Auburn here, and we'll see how far Auburn can go because they're a lower scoring team. I think, especially in the first half, especially if you're gonna take like the over under in the first half, take the under whenever they're playing, at least for a first half. Usually when they get the second half going, that's when their shooters usually do much better. So I can again see that one. I can see them trailing at halftime against Jacksonville State, and everybody's like, upset alert, but then Auburn pulls through. Okay, so let's move on. So now you got second rounds. This is your Saturday-Sunday matchups. So again, we're going to go west to east to south to Midwest. In the West, I would have it being Gonzaga against Memphis. Again, I think the Zags roll on this one. Next up would be Yukon Arkansas, so that would be the 5 against the 4. And I think Yukon, again, is the more battle-hardened team. I think they're going to pull that one through, so I have Yukon going to the Sweet 16. Then you have Rutgers in my bracket versus Texas Tech. It could be also Notre Dame. So with that one, I think it's Texas Tech. I think they can get to the Sweet 16. Then you have Michigan State against Duke. I got to go Duke. I think Duke's a little bit more consistent there. So the Sweet 16 from that one would be Zags, Yukon, Texas Tech, Duke from that one. Moving on to the East bracket, first game would be Baylor against North Carolina. I have Baylor winning this one, but again, I feel like this is a down-to-the-wire, possibly come-from-behind victory for Baylor. And again, I think they're going to have a relatively easy bracket up to this point, I believe. Definitely, on the surface there, it looks like an easier bracket than, say, Kansas, who might have a tough opponent there in either San Diego State or Creighton to advance to second round and everything there. But I think Baylor is going to be the first of the 1 seeds to fall. I don't think it's quite going to be second round like last year when Illinois was the first one to fall. But and definitely not like it was a few years ago here when Virginia, which is the number 1 overall seed, when they fell first round, the first time we ever saw a 16 over a 1. And I remember I picked Virginia to go all the way that year. And, of course, they won next year when I didn't want to pick them at all because I'm like, well, last time I picked them, they didn't turn out well at all. So then they win the whole thing next year, of course. And they're not even in the tournament this year. All right, next up would be number 5, St. Mary's against number 4, UCLA. I got to go UCLA on that one. Next up is Virginia Tech against Purdue. And again, this one, down to the wire, Purdue doing what Purdue does, playing spoiler, being the spoiler makers. I see them, even though I know it's a lot of people thinking, oh, Virginia Tech, they would be the ones to spoil. But I think in game standard, I can see Virginia Tech getting out to an early lead, holding that lead at halftime, even adding on to it a little bit very early in the second half. Matt Painter takes another timeout and leaves 1 or 2 timeouts at like the 17-16 minute mark there in the second half. And then Purdue comes alive. And then they come back, they take the lead, maybe lose it for a second, but still hold on and win. That's my prediction for that one. And then you'd have number 7 Murray State against number 2 Kentucky. And I think, in all honesty, the way all my I've only done 2 brackets, by the way, but I think for Kentucky, if they want to get to a Final Four or possibly a semi, or that would be the semifinal for the whole tournament, but they want to get to a championship game, their toughest opponent might end up being, other than maybe Gonzaga, if they do go Final Four, is going to be Murray State in that second round. If they can beat Murray State in that second round, I really don't see them having to have too many difficulties going forward. And I do have Kentucky winning that second round against Murray State. But if as long as they don't lose that one, I think their road to the Final Four is going to be the easiest when it comes to the rest of the brackets there. So my final for the Sweet 16 in this bracket again, I have Baylor, UCLA, Purdue, and Kentucky. Next up would be the South bracket. In the first game, I have the 1 versus the 9. That's Zona versus TCU. Got to go Zona on that one. Houston against Illinois. That's the 5 and the 4. I've taken a 5 over a 4 on the opposite side here on the West. I got to do it again. I got to go Houston over Illinois. Illinois, again, has some of those inconsistent games in the Big Ten, so they did disappoint at this exact same moment last year as a 1 seed. So as a 4 seed, relatively speaking on the math and stuff, they should have a tougher opponent here in the second round than they did last year playing a 9 seed. But yeah, I got to go with Houston on that one. Next up would be Michigan against Tennessee. I think Tennessee can roll them in that one. And that might be their highest performance for the tournament there. I think if they even in that first game, if they do struggle a little bit with Longwood, I think as long as, and I have them getting out of that one obviously, but when they come to Michigan's second round, that's I think when they pour it on, and then they look really good, and then we'll see where they go from there. Not to spoil it yet, but yeah, we'll see what they can do from there. Okay, then we go to Ohio State versus Villanova. Now this is where the March Madness magic comes in, because I have number 7 Ohio State. I have them beating Nova, and I have the number 2 seed Nova going down early in the second round, losing to Ohio State. Now again, I get it. Ohio State has really been hard to watch here in the last few weeks. They've been beaten by Nebraska. They've been beaten by virtually every team they came up against in the Big Ten when it came to that last few weeks. But that's one of those teams that just feels like they can turn the afterburners on. As soon as they get to the tournament, they're a little better rested, and they can really do some damage. So I have that predicted to happen this year. So my final, the next ones making out the Sweet 16 in this bracket would be Arizona, Houston, Tennessee, and Ohio State. All right, so the Midwest bracket, who do I have advancing? You've got Kansas versus Creighton first round. Creighton, I love you, but I got to go Kansas. Then we have my Hawkeyes against Provi. This is a case where I think Iowa is hoping that Providence wins that first game, because I think they can handle Providence better than they can handle South Dakota State. Because again, South Dakota State has that faster pace, which is a little bit better of a even keel for Iowa. I think they're, again, kind of used to a faster pace. Not always, but usually they'll end up in the higher 60s, 70s to 80s range for their score, as long as they're not pouring it on and getting close to 100 like they did against Northwestern there. So I think they would see South Dakota State as the tougher opponent and Providence as the easier opponent. So I kind of, for my own sake, I put Iowa to win that one as well against Providence. Then we'd have Iowa State against Wisconsin, and again I got to go Wisconsin there. For the most part, they don't have all that many bad losses. Just here in March, they did have a couple of questionable losses when they came to the end of their Big Ten regular season, but and again, kind of a disappointment when they got to the Big Ten tourney. But I don't know. I see them rebounding here when they get to the next deal here, the big dance. And then the final game would be USC against Auburn. I have Auburn surviving that one, but I think that's going to be a close matchup for them. Again, I can see that being very much a game where they trail at halftime or possibly are tied at halftime, and then USC gets off to a slow start in the second half. Auburn pulls ahead. USC pulls it close, but Auburn comes back to win. Or I shouldn't say comes back. They continue, and I don't think they lose the lead after the 8-minute mark in the second half, for example. Just to do that one. So my grand total of the Sweet 16: you've got Gonzaga, Yukon, Texas Tech, Duke, Baylor, UCLA, Purdue, Kentucky, Arizona, Houston, Tennessee, Ohio State, Kansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, Auburn. That's my Sweet 16. So moving on to the West bracket, to get to the Elite Eight, with the Gonzaga Bulldogs have to get through the Yukon Huskies. I'm going with Gonzaga in that game. I think Yukon, back in the old days, this would have been a great matchup. And it could be a fun matchup. And it really could be an old-style kind of shoot-'em-up type game, if you will. But the Zags, I think they win that one by maybe not double digits, but certainly by 8 or 9 points. Somewhere in that range, I think. Very close to double digits. Next up is Texas Tech Duke, the 3 versus the 2. I'm going with the 3 here. I think Duke and Coach K in his final season, I think they're going to exit during the Sweet 16 round. I could be very wrong about that. Early on in the predictions there for some of these sports leagues and stuff, I remember I did say, especially after Georgia was coming on strong, I'm like, I think they're going to win the national championship. but they could lose to Alabama, and they did lose to Alabama. They did come back to win in the second round against, or second matchup against Alabama, and they did win. And at that point, I remember saying, okay, when it comes to the March Madness tournament this year, I got to go Duke all the way. But then the way things have kind of gone, some of these losses, I got to shake my head at it a little bit, and I got to say, sorry, Coach K, early exit. All right, then we have in the East bracket to get down to the Elite Eight, Baylor versus UCLA. I'm going experience. I'm going UCLA, and I think Baylor does exit. The first 1 seed to get knocked off, I think it happens in this round, in the Sweet 16 round. And Baylor, I think, in all honesty, there's a chance they exit before that with North Carolina. And if it's North Carolina against UCLA, then I think it's almost a lights-out UCLA opportunity for them there. And they could win that one going away, 15, 20 points. So then the last one here in the East to get to the Elite Eight would be Purdue versus Kentucky. And again, I got to go Tucky. I think they want it more than Purdue does this year. So then on the opposite side for the South bracket, you've got Zona versus Houston, first round, Arizona. I think they win that one. And then to be Tennessee against Ohio State. Again, at this point in my predictions, I have Tennessee looking really great after dominating it against Michigan. Ohio State, maybe in a miracle buzzer beater shot or something, beats Nova, or they win by like 12 or something ridiculous like that. I think they become a little bit of Cinderella magic comes in there, and Ohio State advances to the Elite Eight. And then you've got Kansas versus Iowa in the Sweet 16 round. Sorry, Hawkeyes, I had you getting to this point last year as well, I believe, or maybe to the Elite Eight as a 2 seed, as a 5, even though you're coming off a Big Ten conference win. Kansas, I think, is just going to be too much, and I see Kansas winning that one. Then you have Wisconsin against Auburn. This is 3 versus 2. I'm going with the 3 here as well. I'm going Wisconsin, going up against Kansas to determine who's going to be the winner there of the Midwest bracket. So my Elite Eight are Gonzaga, Texas Tech, UCLA, Tucky, Zona, Ohio State, Kansas, and Wisconsin. All right. So now the next 4 games decide who wins each separate bracket there. So for the West Championship, to get to the Final Four, it's Gonzaga versus Texas Tech. And I think this one, Texas Tech, I think, is going to do really well in this tournament. And I think Gonzaga is going to be a little bit too much of a buzzsaw for them, and they're going to have a lot of difficulty getting over them in that game. So I got to go Texas Tech, losing in that game to Gonzaga, and Gonzaga advances to their Final Four, and I believe it'd be I can't even remember this is like their 4th, 5th straight Final Four. I guess it doesn't matter, but I have them winning the West bracket. Okay. Then next up, in the East bracket, the championship would come down to UCLA and Kentucky. I got to go Tucky. And I think, again, aside from maybe that Murray State game, I think UCLA can give them some difficulty there. But I think Kentucky's going to stop them from being a UCLA versus Gonzaga Final Four rematch. I think it's very close to happening. And I think UCLA, again, could almost be like this is a last 45 seconds type decider game. Not based on free throws, but based on late threes, possibly fouling on a 3 and getting a 4-point play opportunity, stuff like that. I can see weird scenarios like that in that one. So, Tucky, I have advancing. Then, for the South bracket, it's going to be number 1 Arizona against number 7 Ohio State. I got to go with Arizona. I think the Cinderella magic will stop for Ohio State the way it did for Xavier a few years ago at the same point. And they were, I believe, a 12 seed that year, an 11 or a 12 seed. Okay, then we have Kansas against Wisconsin in my Midwest championship. And some people are picking this one. I agree. I think Kansas doesn't make it out of the bracket. I think it's Wisconsin. So there you go. My Final Four are going to be Gonzaga, Kentucky, Arizona, and Wisconsin. So that, I think, does shape up for a couple of really good games here in the Final Four. And I think what we're going to see happen here is Gonzaga seems to be the favorite again this year like they were last year. But I think they exit in the Final Four, and I think Kentucky survives in a close game. Or it could be, remember Gonzaga last year was the favorite to win, and Baylor, I mean, they didn't roll them, but they certainly did much better than expected. when they got to that championship game, and Baylor won by, it was in like the 10 to 15 point range, somewhere in there. I don't quite see that happening for Kentucky, but I think Kentucky could win it by three possessions, somewhere in that range, up to 9 points. Now, Arizona, Wisconsin, I think, could be the sleeper of these two. I think there's a good shot that Wisconsin, seemingly out of nowhere, could upset Arizona. But I think Arizona is just consistent enough a team. They don't lose very often. They're 31-3 on the year. I think, I just think Arizona wins that one. So my semifinalists in the whole bracket is going to be Kentucky and Arizona. And in the championship game on April 4th, 4-4, I have the Kentucky Wildcats. I have them winning the whole thing. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's the Arizona Wildcats, isn't it? And Kentucky Wildcats. So it's a Wildcats matchup. Yeah. That's right. I'm surprised we're not seeing more people take advantage of that. I should have taken more advantage of that as a joke. It's the Wildcats versus the Wildcats. So who's going to win this one? The Wildcats. Well, which one? I don't know, but it's going to be the Wildcats. There you go. We had a scenario like this not too long ago, actually. It was like Bulldogs against the Bulldogs or something like that. It was something weird like that. I think it was in football. But there was a very similar situation to that. But yeah, I have Kentucky winning the whole thing. You heard it. I don't know if you heard it here first, but you definitely heard it here. All right, so I think I got through this video a lot faster than last year. Last year I had a little bit more insight into some of these teams, some of the players for certain. This year, unfortunately, there were some certain games that I wanted to watch, but I couldn't watch. There were certain ones where I just, for my betting and stuff, I was just doing a lot better if I did not watch, and I got very superstitious with that stuff. But when it comes down to, when we get to the conference finals and stuff, that's when I'm like, okay, I don't care how badly or poor or well I'm doing on my betting, I gotta watch these games. I gotta see these players, these teams, how they do together, and I gotta see how well they're working as a unit, and I'll see just how good a shot they have at taking down some of these big, dangerous opponents and so on and so forth. So, all right. Okay, so there you go. There's your picks for this year. So go ahead and steal from me, and I hope I do better than last year. That's all I got to say about that. But this is always fun to watch. If it's going to be like last year, I'm not really going to follow up much on this. So have fun with this, you guys, and we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming later this week, potentially, or after the guilds are over on Sunday. And we'll get into the final week before the Oscars. So they're 2 weeks from yesterday. So, yeah, it's fine. Everything comes together at once, right? Absolutely.